Hello, everybody. My name is Gary Fowler, and it's great to be here one more time. I am a serial entrepreneur. I've done 17 startups. I've been involved in 2 unicorns. I was on the original management team at Click Software, sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company that I co founded with Dr. David Yang. Love artificial intelligence, quantum computing, the token economy, tokens, token economy, everything around it, blockchain, and of course, gaming, because the world's a much different place than it was a couple of years ago and changing very quickly. So, with that, I'd like to introduce my guest, Robby Yung from Animoca. Robbie's got an illustrious career. Went to school in the United States, Chicago, New York, has a deep background currently living in Hong Kong, working with companies in gamification, as a sandbox, and just all around entrepreneur and investor. And with that, I'd like to introduce Robbie. How you doing, Robbie?
Hi, how are you, Gary?
Oh, I'm really good. So tell me a little bit about it. So you're blockchain gaming,
Yep.
delivering property rights to gamers. What does that mean? So
Sure.
exactly what is delivering property rights to gamers?
So, as you know, gaming for the last, I don't know, more than 15, 20 years has been all about game experiences as closed ecosystems. We started out with cartridges and CDs and DVDs, and then eventually went to online gaming and mobile, but games have always been closed ecosystems, meaning you play inside the game and the developer designs a game and it's a standalone experience. And over the last decade, thanks to the internet permeating every aspect of our lives, including gaming, gaming has become much more of a social activity. So it's not just about, like when you and I were kids, you played against the computer, as we call it. But nowadays, it's all about not just playing against your friends, but other people, strangers, joining leagues and guilds, and even just getting into games to chat and hang out in alternative sort of metaverses with people. And so as this evolution has taken place, one of the things I think that gamers have become accustomed to is that they actually are only ever renting the items that they spend money on in games. So when you go into a game that's built on a freemium business model, typically the game is free to play, but inside the game, you have to pay in-game currency to buy virtual items. But the reality is that you don't really own those items. You just rent a license to them to use while you're in the game. You can't take the item outside the game. You can't sell the item, not at least without the developer's permission, because they're completely closed ecosystems. Blockchain now has changed all that, because once we start to build games on the blockchain, we can use the technology of NFTs, of non-fungible tokens, to tokenize those game assets. And once you
Oh my
tokenize
God,
those game
I love
assets,
that, Robbie. I mean, that's really interesting. So, I mean, to be honest with you, I haven't thought of that, but you're 100% right. Imagine that. So you not only can play the game, but you can own part of the game.
yep. So then you start to spend money on stuff in the game, just like you always have, but you actually own those items in the game. So as NFTs, then those items become yours to keep. You can take them outside the game. You can take them to a third-party marketplace like OpenSea or Wax, and you can trade them with other players. And that, I think, absolutely revolutionizes the idea of how you interact with games. Because for most people, the money they spend in games is about either extending the amount of time that they spend in it. You buy another life because your character died, for example, in
Mm-hmm.
the classic example, or by making cosmetic enhancements. You want to have a new skin on your Fortnite character, or you want to compete in a battle, so you need a bigger sword and a faster horse, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's why you spend money in games. But imagine if you got tired of playing that battle game and you're like, I don't need this fancy sword and this fancy horse that I bought last month. I actually, I want to go play Pokemon. And so if there was a way for you to then sell that horse and that sword, recoup some of that money that you invested in, and then go and buy a Pokemon or go and spend it on something else, I think consumers would be much more happy. And so that's what we're working towards now, is building blockchain games where we have ownership and property rights of the assets in the games, And also, once those property rights are established, it also allows for the potential to have interoperability, meaning I can take that horse and that sword from this game A into game B. And that is another thing that I think gamers have historically always wanted to do. Because if you think about, for example, we have a lot of driving games. We have a Formula One game called F1 Delta Time. We've got a MotoGP game. We have a Formula E game. And one of those things that petrol heads love is, racing different stuff against each other. Like, it's cool to watch a Formula One race, but everybody wants to know, what if, Valentino Rossi on his superbike got on the track with Lewis Hamilton? Who would win? People want to know these kind of things because that's part of the fun of gaming. And in an alternative universe, you can make these things happen. So in blockchain gaming, we can make those things happen because the NFTs can be interoperable so that I can take them from one game to another. And I think this unlocks, a whole heap of potential, I think, within the industry for developers to develop really, really fun stuff that allows users to do things they were never able to do before.
No, that's really interesting. And do you think, this is just me, I'm a country boy from Pennsylvania, grew up on the side of a mountain, a 500-person village. So, but for me, we're becoming, the virtual world. And I had a discussion with some friends from the UN this morning, and I was on a panel, AR and VR as a tool. Do you think we're really blending the worlds together? Is it coming to the point? Because the more you talk about owning things and being in this world, the more the virtual world is becoming the real world, right? So
yes.
Where are we going with this thing? And do you think there's a danger we get too deeply enraptured in the virtual world that we don't come out? Because I don't know about you, but I surely pick up my phone a lot every day.
Exactly. And so if, for example, if you have one of those apps that tracks your screen time, then you'll see that you probably spend much of your life in the virtual world already, based on, interacting with email or social media, messaging apps, etc. So I think we already are living in a virtual world. We just don't have we don't have a universally shared visual representation of it. We don't have the Ready Player One, Matrix, Blade Runner style sci-fi imagination of it, which I think actually we will see more and more of now. And I think that's filtering through not just from the influence of science fiction, but also from gaming entertainment, because as game developers have typically always been at the cutting edge of software development, and in terms of utilizing computing power and rendering ability of graphics, etc. So if you want the most high fidelity graphic experience, it's typically found in games.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who founded a company called NVIDIA, Jensen, and we were talking about the world. He told me that he went out they were playing, when they first founded NVIDIA, they were playing video games. They went out to an arcade at the time where you could pay money, and he started to say, well, why don't we have these kind of graphics on our PCs?
Yep.
So that's where they founded NVIDIA, and he said, I brought those home, but you're just taking it to an entirely new level. And of course, Jensen, if you're listening, you're doing it too with NVIDIA, because part of the reason we are talking about it today is because of you, Jensen. So we appreciate it. But it is it's an interesting situation, to the point that one is we have all this data around us, so we need to use a phone to be able to track the information, right, to get it into one place. But then do you think it's going to come to a point? It's interesting. We could actually, thinking about it, I just wrote an article called Replica in Forbes magazine, and it's about AI actually replicating ourselves, right? Some of the technology that's out there today. Robbie, we don't even need to play a game anymore. We can have ourselves playing a game. We can watch it, right?
We can do that. Absolutely. Well, it's really no different than using software to automate other tasks, right? We have scripts that can automate calculations in spreadsheets so that we don't have to pull out the adding machines anymore. So I don't know that it's any different. It's just become tremendously sophisticated. So I think at this point now you can see people providing, when you have online games, you can see other service providers providing services that, say you have a game where there are, say it's a battle game where you have to work as a team. Well, there's no reason that you can't have the other members of your team be virtual, AI characters or bots. But bots that you go and source from third-party service providers to join your team, that's honestly no different than the farmer who decides to use a sophisticated tractor to plow his field instead of doing it by hand. It's just bringing man-made equipment to the field to make yourself more efficient.
No, you're right about it. I mean, the only difference is with unsupervised AI, it can make the decisions. You don't even have to be involved. So it'll be an interesting world. Hopefully, we don't get that bad that we create ourselves and then forget about it and just watch a game being played to see if we win or not. You know?
Well, and here's the interesting thing is that you'll notice with the incredible success of Twitch that actually, people don't always have to play games to get enjoyment from them. There's an incredible audience of people who just want to watch other people play games too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're right. These kind of virtual experiences where we're actually moving ourselves into the environment and becoming part of it without participating per se is interesting. All right, so let's go back to yourself. How did you get to the Czech Republic? I mean, how did you do? You were with a company. What's it called? Gamey or?
Gamey is one of our subsidiaries. Yes, so we
So
acquired
were
Gamey,
you in the Czech
which is in
Republic?
Prague.
Did you move from Hong Kong there? What?
No.
How did that happen?
No, Gamey is a fantastic business that is headquartered in Prague, and we discovered them. Well, like most things in our world, we discovered them through a little bit of old-fashioned networking and a lot of online research. So we found them because they had very successful games, and one of the things that we liked about them is that they were particularly successful at leveraging a relatively new platform at the time, which was called Telegram, the messaging platform, and they were very, very successful at building games on top of Telegram's platform. And so we saw a huge opportunity to try to hook into that audience and introduce them to blockchain games. So what we've done with Gamey is we've now essentially created a play-to-earn business model, which is one of the, I guess, most attractive business models around blockchain games for Gamey's existing games, so that you can play them and win prizes and earn NFTs based on the time you spend playing in the games. And I think, as we think about why to introduce blockchain into games, the play-to-earn model is a huge and compelling reason to do so, because now people can actually be rewarded for the time they spend playing in games.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things. I'm working on a project called Tempest, and it's all about times and tokenization and how do you value people's time, because I don't think we've really looked at it binary and we haven't assessed value of time.
Mm-hmm.
And also loyalty, right? So loyalty comes into the picture too. How loyal. Look at the frequent flyer programs. I know we were in one of my companies that I co-founded was in the model of building e-commerce sites with some of the major airlines, and how important that is to be able to have that loyalty. How many times do you participate in the game, and how much time are you inside the game playing, and what are you playing on? How sophisticated is it, right? So the value of that. So it's an entirely new model, and going from binary over to this incredible new model where they're valuing the time and effort, it's going to really change the nature of the games.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And I think we've seen that most clearly actually in the example of a company that we invested in, Sky Mavis, that has a game called Axie Infinity. So Axie Infinity is really the leader in sort of proving this play to earn model. And just, August has been an incredible month for them. They actually turned over $1 billion in trading volume in the game.
Wow. And that's one of your companies?
It's a company that we invested in.
Well,
so
congratulations.
we're a shareholder.
By the way,
Thank
Robbie,
you.
how many companies do you have that you've invested in at this point?
Good question. A lot. I would have said more than 60 probably in the last couple of years. So we've been very active, and that's in large part because we're still in an industry that's very much in its infancy, and so we felt it was important that the success of the industry is our success. So we really wanted to support the ecosystem and do what we could to encourage diversity, to encourage a multi-chain environment, and encourage healthy competition and openness within our sector, because I think those are kind of the founding principles of the blockchain community, and we want to make sure that persists into the world of gaming and NFTs and things like that. So I think we've been a strong supporter, and so you'll find us on a lot of cap tables.
No, and what kind of investments? What's the size of the investments you're making? What kind of check sizes?
Oh, usually they're quite small because most of the businesses in this segment are very new. So they're usually seed stage investments, sometimes Series A. So I'd say, typically less than $3 million.
Hmm. Wow, that's great. And so,
Yeah.
what country, if you look by country, what country today, I mean, and this shifts a bit, but what
Hmm.
country today is really percentage of the population has really diving into going online and understanding, the time value and the complexity?
You're,
What country?
you're gonna love the answer to this one. The Philippines.
Are you serious?
Yep.
Why is that?
Because the Philippines. So first of all, Axie Infinity is actually built in. So let me preface this. Blockchain gaming and the blockchain industry in general, but particularly blockchain gaming, I think is
Hmm.
interesting because this is, in my opinion, going to be a major revolution in technology. It's going to really permeate a lot of what we do over the next 10 years, similar to what happened with mobile, a decade ago. And but this is the first major tech revolution that's not somewhat monopolized by Silicon Valley. So if you look and you make a list of, anybody's list, honestly, of the top 10 blockchain game companies or blockchain companies, there will be a couple from the US, but the majority will not be from the US. And neither will their investors. And so that's very interesting because it actually is quite decentralized and diversified. There are great companies from literally all over the world. And that's something that I think is very fascinating for innovation, and partly due to the fact that blockchain is very much open source software. So people can, and it's completely software based. So there's, you really just need an internet connection and a computer to be able to participate. And so what we found, the reason I said that about the Philippines is because actually Axie Infinity in particular, as well as other blockchain games, has a very, very large audience in the Philippines because they have done a fantastic job in their play to earn model of being able to put together two different types of audiences in the game. And games historically have always had two different kinds of player bases that you have to cater to as a game designer. You have your player base of people who have lots of time, but don't have much money to spend in the game. In the American analogy, those would usually be, or Western analogy, those are usually students. So
Hmm.
they love to play games, tons of time to spend on games, but no money to spend.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah. And high school students, right? It's some college
exactly,
that
and they,
should
and
be
they get really
studying.
exactly, and they get really proficient at playing the game, but they don't, from a developer standpoint, they don't make you much money.
Hmm.
On the other hand, you have the whales, you have the high spending players who love to spend money in the game, but don't really have much time. And so that's where in the free to play model, they usually spend their money to buy enhancements and upgrades and things that save them time. Why do I have to pass 30 levels to earn this sword to kill zombies? I could just pay $10 and buy the sword, and then I can kill zombies just as fast because I
Hmm.
only have 20 minutes to play the game. I don't have all day like my 16-year-old son, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so the fine balance for game
Well, not only
developers.
that, you want to show your 16-year-old son that you have the sword, and you may not know that you didn't earn it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Oh, I
Well,
happen to get this. What did you get? I got a sword and a shield. Unbelievable. Come on, you can't beat your old dad, you know?
exactly. And so part of game development design has always been to bring these two audiences together to be able to have one game that caters to both audiences so that there's a grinding path in the game to success where you spend hours and hours, and there's been a spending path to success. Uh, and what Axie Infinity has done, and other blockchain games who are doing this play to earn model, is they've brought these two together so that essentially now we have literally tens of thousands of players in Axie Infinity in the Philippines who are part of that grinding audience. They're playing the game and spending hours in the game, but they're monetizing their time because there's a high spending audience who wants the assets that they create in the game. So in the game, they're earning
So they're
characters.
creating the assets, and the whales are buying them.
Exactly, because the
Well,
whales
I love
just
that.
want to trade the assets.
And
And
how,
so,
what typical
so
whale's age, Robbie? How old is a whale?
a whale would be a 25 to 40-year-old person typically.
Hmm. Typically male or female?
More male than female. because I think the typical whale would be more like the profile of a day trader.
Got it. That's what I was going to say. By the way, these students that you talk about that are
Mm-hmm.
playing the games make excellent day traders because they're
Mm-hmm.
so damn fast. I don't know if you know that, right? They can think quickly.
Exactly.
But don't
But
get any ideas out there, day traders. Don't get any ideas, gamers. Come on. It's not me. I'm not recommending to go day trading from gaming.
But what's fantastic is that this sort of virtual loop, the virtuous circle of reinforcement, it creates kind of a flywheel of engagement. And then what we've seen is that on the side of the players in the Philippines, they're actually able to make a living wage. So there are
Seriously.
there are literally thousands of people now whose job literally is to play this game, and they make a living. They make a decent living and have devoted themselves to it as a full-time job. And that really, is the very definition of play to earn. And from our perspective as game developers, we think that's amazing because here are people, you can actually generate employment for people based on their activities in the game.
Yeah, I mean, but then they have to spend 8 hours a day doing their game, right? That's a whole different deal.
Yeah, well, and you can argue whether it's more tedious to spend 8 hours playing a game or working in a factory or any other job that you spend 8 hours at.
Well, I mean, the only difference in the factory, you're probably going to move around a little. You may not move around much in your chair, right? So I think we got to have some special kind of exercise equipment for these gamers to be able to help
Exactly.
them out. Now, it's interesting. So what do you think is going to happen over the next 3 to 5 years? And we know AI is going to,
Mhm.
machine learning is going to be more deeply involved because we want, totally immersive experiences. But where's it going to go? What are some of the trends and directions?
Sure. I think that you'll see blockchain working its way into all different aspects of life because I'm a firm believer that it really is sort of the hub of this third generation of the web. Based on the idea that we can now transfer value to one another. And I think for anybody who's ever made a blockchain transaction of sending cryptocurrency to somebody else, it then occurs to you once you do that our banking system is quite outdated, frankly, if we can think of something like cryptocurrency. So I think that you're going to see infiltration not just in the world of finance, but now with the kind of stuff we're working on in entertainment. So beyond just gaming, you can think about use cases like royalty management. So blockchain is incredible as a technology for royalty management, rights management. So you could distribute, for example, music or video as non-fungible tokens, and people can pay royalties and earn royalties directly because it basically disintermediates so that artists can then connect directly with fans for these purposes. And I think that's going to have wide-reaching effects. So I think what's going to happen is that you'll find a lot of companies who were previously publishers or in the business of distribution and promotion will have to refine their business models because they won't be able to survive merely on just being gatekeepers anymore.
No, I agree. And it's going to be an interesting life to see how we start to democratize opportunities and, the educational impact. The other part is, gamification, taking it to the next level with education to be able to help kids be able to learn faster and better.
Yep.
And then to tokenize that, right? So you get rewarded for studying and that kind of thing. It's interesting. So what about your business? What do you see over the next year? What's going to happen to you? I know you say
Sure.
you have, 150
I think
investments today, and where's
I
it going
think
to
that
go?
well, we're continuing obviously to invest apace because we see tremendous opportunities in this particular sphere, and we think that there's a lot of road ahead. I think when you look at the blockchain gaming business, we're still literally at ground zero, so to speak, because when you compare it to things like mobile gaming, people forget that iOS and the iPhone was out for 4 years before Angry Birds was launched. And people forget that, because often you think back and think Angry Birds is like the first game I remember on my phone. But
And I
actually,
think a lot of people forget when the first iPhone came out too. I mean, it's like it's taken for
exactly,
granted. There were no
exactly.
flip phones like when we, grew up,
Yep.
having Motorola's and everything else. It's a whole different deal today. People forget very quickly.
Yes. And so in blockchain gaming, literally the first NFT was created at the end of 2017. And it was largely an unknown technology till earlier this year. And, we were amongst a small handful of developers working on games and launching games back in 2018 and 19. So I think, we're really just getting started. I think in the next 12 to 18 months, you'll start to see the launch of content in blockchain gaming that is more similar to what people are accustomed to on console today. You'll start to see real AAA quality content, whereas the games you see right now in blockchain gaming from a graphic standpoint are still relatively basic, only because this is literally like the Gen Zero product, and most blockchain games to date have been built by blockchain people who have an interest in gaming, rather than from traditional game studios, only because traditional game studios have only recently become aware that this is something that they could consider. And I think getting traditional game studios to migrate to incorporating blockchain is going to take some time, just like we saw it take a very long time for a lot of console and PC game developers to move to mobile, because I think, it's always hard to change what you're doing, and this is going to upend it, tremendously in terms of the existing business models.
No, I agree. I mean, over the last 2 years, because of the pandemic, and on one side, people wanted to feel that they belong and part of a group, so they really have the I don't know what the statistic is in terms of gaming, but I can tell you, on the online world and Zoom, I mean, when you start talking about 350, 400 million users of a product. I remember 6 years ago, when I was one of the early Zoom users, and I would send out a link and people say, "Oh, I don't know what this is. I use Skype and WhatsApp." And I'm like, "God, this is really good." But because of the pandemic, people want to feel a sense of belonging. People want to feel like they're part of a group, and having games that can bring people together and they can participate and spend time and feel like they're accomplished something are just incredible. So,
Yeah.
closing thoughts, Robbie. We're coming to the top of the hour, and how can people get a hold of you?
Sure. You can always find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter, and you can find me on Telegram, Discord, you name it, all the usual places. But yeah, LinkedIn is usually the easiest. And for anybody who wants to know more about our business, just go to the Animoca Brands website. We talk a lot about what we do and the businesses we've invested in and our games, etc.
Robbie, I want to tell you thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join me today on GST Presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech. It's incredible. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I had some questions that you answered today, and I have the same feeling. We're moving to this virtual world with things like hyper-personalization, gamification of everything. It's an incredible time. To my audience out there, thank you again for tuning in to one more edition of GST Presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm the host. I want to say stay happy, stay healthy, and stay safe. Tune in again next Tuesday for another exciting edition of GST Presents. Robbie, thank you. Take care. Stay healthy, stay happy, stay safe, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye. Till
Thanks,
next
Gary.
week.